Okay, Dr. Jason W. Morrison, Theologist, New South Wales, Australia, continuing with the JW broadcast for May 2019, our Bethel section, and I've got to run this tape for you now. We'll just see what, we're going to go a little bit deeper into it this time. What's happened here?
Jehovah by making themselves available for the special privilege of Bethel service. Have you considered this as a goal?
Now, this is their Bethel service propaganda scheme. Recruitment. They want recruits, obviously. They're reaching out to the people in their organization, and we'll run this tape.
Making yourself available for Bethel service is like knocking on a door that leads to many other privileges of service. Of course, to serve at Bethel requires a self-sacrificing spirit and a willingness to serve wherever there is a need, in harmony with the attitude displayed by the prophet Isaiah at Isaiah 6:8.
Now, I just want to say to you, and I want to make this very clear, we're not playing games here with this organization. This is a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate organization, and they pay these people at Bethel pittance. Now, I know Christian organizations that pay their people a salary in which they can live and provide for their family and be able to get somewhere in life. This organization, I'm going to repeat, is a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate corporation, and they're sending people to this Bethel to serve on pittance. Well, viewers, I do ask your apology. I've had to cut that short. I went on for 40 minutes. I just got absorbed in the presentation. I'm going to refer you now to two of what I believe are the two of the giants of the many giants that are out there helping people to understand the Jehovah's Witness organization. So I hope you enjoy this next part of the video. But again, I do apologize. I've gone well over the time that I expected to go, but I'm sure you'll enjoy it as I bring it out in the next presentation. Enjoy now. Two of the most amazing men you'll probably ever get to listen to.
Hello viewers, well, I'm very excited because today I get to speak to a personal hero. I have with me Paul Grundy, who is founder of the website jwfacts.com, which was instrumental in my awakening from the Jehovah's Witness religion. I'm sure the same can be said for many of you watching. Paul, thanks so much for joining me.
Hi Lloyd, thanks for having me.
So we've got so much to get through, and I need to try to hold myself back a little bit from gushing about all the ways in which my life is different, thanks in large part to your work. We can kind of come to that a bit later, but I guess to begin with, we can start by asking you to explain your story and your background with the witnesses.
Yeah, so I was brought up a witness, and I've got quite a lot of stories, I guess, on the website, so I don't want to sort of go over all of it again too much, I guess. But yeah, I was when I finished school, I went to university, which was not really allowed at the time. So I started full-time service as well to justify being able to go to university, and ended up doing seven years as a regular pioneer, or 3.5 years regular pioneer, and then 3.5 years in Bethel. So I got to really see the inner workings of the religion. And then after my parents then went on, and Dad became a circuit overseas for 20 years. So through him I got to meet a lot of the different circuit overseas, and I met a lot of the Bethelites, and including a number of the Bethelites. I saw Fred Franz. I actually waited for him, a few of the other governing body. I was a good friend of Jeffrey Jackson. So I guess I got to really know the inner workings of the religion, and got to know a lot about the doctrine. And so when I did leave, I felt I had a bit of an obligation, that I had access to so much information and so many stories and so much of how things are done in the religion, that I felt I sort of needed to share that with other people, because I don't think the majority of witnesses get to sort of have that full rounded understanding of how the religion really operates.
Well, indeed, and you were perfectly positioned to compile all this information. I just have to ask you about your father. Am I right in saying that your father has since passed away? Um, but you mentioned,
Yes.
yeah, but you mentioned that he allowed you to go to university despite being a circuit overseer. Did he not get into any trouble for that?
Well, at the time, he wasn't a circuit overseer. He was presiding overseer in the congregation. We actually had quite a bit of trouble. I had people talking to the circuit overseer in that area at the time. But because I was pioneering, he said, well, if your kids aren't pioneering, wait till they pioneer before you complain about it. People spoke to Dad about it as well. But I think because I was doing a lot within the truth as such, I was getting up there, giving lots of talks and experiences, etc. It sort of balanced out the fact that I was also going to university. Although when I got to Bethel, they sort of punished me for it because I got into Bethel. I had the capability to sort of maybe help in some of the bookkeeping, but instead to make sure that I was kept humble, I spent a year cleaning toilets and factory cleaning. So they made sure that I realised that I wasn't better than anyone else because of my education.
And you feel that they kind of, just to spite you for going through higher education, they made you clean toilets for longer than you perhaps would have done?
In fact, I don't know when I would have stopped cleaning toilets. I mean, I don't really know the motivation. I actually got kicked off the toilet cleaning because I used to go down and play music at the pool when I was cleaning the pool. So then they thought that they couldn't really trust me wandering around on my own doing such a terrible job. So then they brought me into waitering so that they could make sure that I wasn't enjoying myself too much.
Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned being in Bethel for about 3 years. Was it am I right in saying that it was while you were in Bethel that, you started to kind of see problems with the organization?
Yeah, I mean, looking back, I guess I always had some problems with faith. Like I've read through some of the notes I've taken and diaries and poetry I wrote back when I was a teenager, and I always struggled with some of the concepts of me being lucky enough to be born into the only true religion. I was just lucky enough to be born into the one that was going to get saved when everyone else was going to die. So I always had those doubts, but it was going to Bethel that it really became apparent that there is just no guidance by Holy Spirit. It was just a factory. It was run by men with their personality flaws, and it was really no different than some of the bosses I'd worked for in other companies. In fact, I had jobs with normal companies, normal people, and the way they treated me was so much better than the way I got treated at Bethel. I had a number of terrible experiences at Bethel, and really unreasonable things. Like I was cleaning was one of the head cleaners for the convention, and so I asked if I started work a bit earlier, if I could stop work a couple of hours early so I could go do the convention cleaning and organise the team. And they just said, no, you can't do that. These are the Bethel hours. You have to do the Bethel hours. And I'm like, I used to ask my worldly boss to have a couple of hours off to go to conventions, or the Saturday off that I'd clean at night instead, and they were always compliant. And here this religion where I was trying to do more for the religion, they wouldn't let me do it. So I just saw that it was just run by men. And then eventually there was the main catalyst was where one of my friends was committing adultery, and during that time got promoted to being an elder. And I'm like, wow, where's the Holy Spirit? Like, the Holy Spirit knows he's committed adultery, and it still appoints him as an elder. And that's where it's really triggered this thought that the Holy Spirit just isn't running this organisation.
So did you know he was committing adultery and you were kind of keeping quiet about it?
Oh no, I didn't know at the time.
Yeah.
He'd been committing adultery with his wife's best friend for 7 years, and then after he got made an elder, the other lady ended up getting feeling guilty, and she went to the elders, and that's when it came out it had been going on for 11 years. And he actually brought this woman into Bethel while everyone went to a meeting on Tuesday night. He pretended to be sick and went and got her and brought her into Bethel. So it was like very, very brazen. And when it all came out, it was a very big deal. But I'm thinking, wow, where's the Holy Spirit in all of this? And when I actually asked the Bethel elders about that and asked my father, and they're like, well, Holy Spirit guides us through providing the Bible and the principles. And I'm like, no, that's not what the Watchtower says. The Watchtower says Holy Spirit actively guides the decisions and the appointments and the articles. So you can't like weasel around and say it's just that we read the Bible. The way I've been taught is that it's actually actively involved. So that's really what triggered my desire to sort of look more into the doctrine, more into other religions, more into what other people believe.
So did you go kind of straight from Bethel to, activist, or was there kind of like a transitional period where you were kind of trying to figure things out and maybe salvage something of your faith?
Yeah, my parents wanted to take me overseas. We went to South America because they like traveling. And so while I was still a Bethelite, I had like 2 months of holidays accrued. So I went and I travelled, and I stayed in Bethels all around South America. And then I was supposed to stay in New York, Bethel, but my official holidays had run out, so my termination of Bethel had run out. So then they didn't allow me to stay there. After that, I then decided to continue travelling for over a year. And during that period, I sort of just met people of different cultures and just wanted to learn about people and life. And I sort of came to realise I didn't really believe in, that God was directing the organisation, but I just had this I didn't know what to believe, so this huge emptiness. And then I thought, if I come back, I'm not going to know anybody, I don't have any friends, I'm going to lose my family if I leave, I better give it another shot. So I went through this period of trying to fade out, got cold feet, I guess, just didn't have the the strength to do what I really should have done back then, and so then came back into trying to just go through the motions within the religion. But it was actually when I came back and I confessed that I'd done a few things overseas, I'm sitting before the elders, and I'm going, I actually know that I don't believe this is the truth. If they don't disfellowship me, I'm not at all repentant. I don't think I did anything wrong. I think I did what I needed to do. If they think I'm repentant, then that's further proof that Holy Spirit isn't directing any of this. So that was my actual coming back and repenting, where I realised that this is just a group of men that don't really know what they're doing. But I still just didn't know what to believe. So I hadn't done the research. I didn't understand other doctrine enough to make an informed decision on what to do. So just then ticked along for a few years just to try and keep the family happy.
And they just presumably reproved you rather than disfellowshipping you?
Yes, I got public reproof. So they got up on the platform and said that I'd done things that I shouldn't have done, and I was repentant. And then everyone came up and they were crying, and it was like a huge thing. And I was just like, wow, it's I'm stuck here. I don't really believe it, but I just don't have anything else to do or anywhere else to go. So I sort of feel ashamed of it now. When I look back and see all these young people that, even people I grew up with that made the escape in their late teens or their early 20s, and here I was, I just didn't have the, that strength to do that, and I ended up, floundering around for another 10 years before I finally had the strength to do what I knew was right all along.
So take us through the genesis of jwfacts.com, because arguably, my activism is due at least in part to that. I mean, when I was first looking for information, when I'd kind of given myself permission to look behind the curtain, first of all, it was Wikipedia, because I figured, well, that's like a neutral place where they're not going to be necessarily making judgments or saying anything negative. But after Wikipedia had given me a few things to question, your website was the first thing that I looked at, I think even before Crisis of Conscience. So, and just the kind of calm, rational tone of the website. And one thing I mentioned in my book as well is that one of the first things that I did on visiting your website was try to find out who'd made it, who'd written it. And there was a photograph of you and Zach on one of the pages that for some reason just made me think, yeah, he looks like a normal guy. He looks like someone, like not my idea of like an angry, bitter, resentful apostate. So it really was something, and I'm curious to know what the genesis of that website was.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is that the reason it's become what it is because of some of the elders and because of my mother. So originally the elders came and they were talking to me, and I admitted I didn't really have faith in the organisation. So they came up with the normal answer, the past, prayer, association, service, study. So do more of that, do more study, prove this is the truth. So I decided to start doing more study. So I started researching. So I went through the reasoning book, and I just went through each topic, and I thought I'll do research though, but I need to get a balanced opinion. I can't just keep studying what the Watchtower says if I want to be honest with myself. I need to see what other opinions say. And the very first one I started with abortion, and it's like, this is very black and white. It's wrong under any circumstance. And then I was reading stuff about, situations where maybe abortion isn't wrong, whether, maybe the mother's life's at stake, or, maybe she's been raped and all these things. And I'm like, wow, there's all this like grey area in topics that I just always assumed was black and white. And it was virtually every single topic. It kept coming up that there's all these things I'd never ever considered. And I had to start writing it down because it was just spinning around in my head. I was like, is it this or is it that? What does this mean? Am I right about this? And so I had to sort of really put it down into paper. And then I started discussing these topics with my mother, and she really is like the most fundamentalist Jehovah's Witness, and would just throw back all the answers that every really good trained Jehovah's Witness will say. So all the light gets brighter, or wait on Jehovah, or different viewpoints. And so that just prompted me to keep going back and doing more and more and more research and thorough research. And so she sort of helped me get to understand not only my full understanding of how the religion is conceived, but how my father and how my mother sort of believed things, what angles they came at. So I ended up with a huge amount of information from multiple viewpoints and answering every single question after many, many months of arguing back and forth about it. So I had this incredible big resource. And then during that, like yourself, I couldn't start by researching apostate things, because that was going to be lies. It was going to be influenced by Satan. So I started with encyclopedias, started with the Watchtower publications, the older ones, then the encyclopedias, and then finally got onto the apostate information. And then I saw Crisis of Conscience, and I'm like, wow, there's so much information here that's already been done. I've spent, it was years really in the making of research, that it was a lot of it was just clearly already there. I'm like, why didn't I read this before? So I did want, at some point I eventually went, like, I could have saved myself really 10 years of heartache if I had just been given that book 10 years earlier. So I thought I need to get this information out there on the internet, so that somebody can come along and just go in one go, just find all that information that had taken me years to pile up. I mean, at first, that wasn't my first goal. My first goal, I created just a little anonymous website for my parents to read, because I couldn't, we were arguing, it just was going nowhere. So I thought if they can just read the information in a nice, calmly laid out way, maybe that would have an effect, which it didn't. But that was where it sort of started. And eventually I want all this information out there for other people to benefit from, so they can save themselves years of work and confusion.
So the very first kind of prototype JW Facts was just for your parents, is that right?
Yeah, so I just had a few pages there, and it wasn't, I actually printed it as a book first of all, but I gave it to a couple of my friends, my cousin, to read. And then after that, I was like, if I do print it as a book, I don't know how many people will read it. And I spoke to Ray Franz actually about whether it was worth printing the information. And he sort of told me how limited, even with his book, how limited edition, or how many copies he was getting out, particularly in the other languages. It wasn't a way to really make money or get it into that many hands. And I thought, well, I really am not interested in making money. I just want to get as many people to read as possible. And so that's where eventually I put everything there. And then after getting this fellowship, I had nothing to lose, so I put my name on it, and I could sort of put more information out there.
I'm really glad that you were able to talk to Ray, because by the time that I was kind of waking up, in fact, I think we must have overlapped slightly. He died in 2011, I think, or 2010, thereabouts. That's kind of when I was waking up, and by the time I knew about him, he'd already died. So it's good that he was able to kind of give you some advice. And I would agree with him that... Yeah, go on.
Yeah, he would answer with these huge emails, like very, very long. I think he must take, like, you talk about some experiences or something that had recently come along. So he probably sent a bulk of it to each person during that week, but then everything was very carefully tailored. And I wrote a specific letter when Jeff Jackson became of the governing body, because I'm going, I knew this guy, and he seemed to be like, an intelligent, reasonable guy. What's the chance that he could become the next Ray Franz and leave? And what is the motive? How do governing body members know they're not in a cult when they know the history and the inner workings? And so he gave some interesting insight into the types of governing body members, and why are they on there and whether they really believe or not.
It makes me feel happy to think that you guys were kind of in touch, and he was able to pass on some of his advice and some of his ideas, because I think the end product, it certainly helped me, and I'm sure it's continuing to help many. He was right in saying that you reach fewer people with print. I've kind of learned that myself with my book, and with my book, I think there's over 2,000 copies sold so far, but that's still a small amount compared to how many people you can reach just by making information available on the internet, which is why I'm so keen on, primarily focusing on my YouTube channel, because then you can just reach as many, you can reach potentially tens of thousands of people with, with a decent video. So I've got a few more questions to ask. In what ways do you think the religion has changed since you left?
So it's a good question, because I went to my first meeting today after I haven't been to a proper meeting for probably 12 years now, and I had heard that it had changed dramatically. So I thought, I really need to get in there. Since I write about this stuff, I better get in there and see what a meeting's really like.
You sent me a photograph of your feet at the Kingdom Hall, didn't you? It looked, I was like, you're in a Kingdom Hall, Paul.
Those chairs, I actually made those, well, not maybe that specific chair, but I made chairs for Kingdom Halls out of that same frame, the frame, welded up frame, and exactly how they do those. I'm like, wow, this is deja vu, because that was 25 years ago. But
what made you want to go back? What made you want to go back to a Kingdom Hall?
I mean, I wanted to see what has changed, because it sort of seemed to me that the religion is just dramatically different. And but also, I've got this little son, and I did a little video for my YouTube channel that I'll release shortly with my son, and he just couldn't pronounce all these terms, like there's apostasy, and he's like apostasy, and he's getting really confused. And I'm like, oh wow, like I didn't realize these aren't terms that normal people use. There's this whole education he's missed out on by not going to the meetings. And so I've been threatening him for years that I'm going to punish you by having to sit there for an hour and a half through a meeting and like see what I had to suffer for 3 times a week for years. So I was actually going to tell that if anyone asked me what I was doing there, I was just going to say, well, I was brought up in this and I wanted my son to suffer the same. But everyone was so nice, I couldn't. I ended up having very, very nice conversations with many, many people there. So we sat down. Everyone's got their little iPads out, which is great because I could just send texts and surf the internet the whole time. But I mean, it hadn't really changed fundamentally. You've just got the brother standing on the platform with the same old core information of pray to God and he'll look after you and he looks after all of us. And the Watchtower is about doing everything possible to get into the new system, and why would we do commit immorality, short-term gains for getting into the new system, like that core message of just manipulation and fear, and that was the same. And it was quite embarrassing because I'm sitting there and they just kept talking about sexual immorality over and over and over again. I got like a 9-year-old son there, he's going, oh my God, they said like, he goes, sexual immorality, they couldn't stop saying that term.
It's quite inappropriate material, isn't it, to be bombarding a child with week in, week out, just constant talk about porn and masturbation and fornication and what have you. Astonishing.
Yeah, and it's stuff that he doesn't really, it's just a different language almost, and this concept about setting the guidelines with your partner beforehand, and it was just it's just like going into a different world, a bit of a time warp. So the only real difference I saw was like everyone's got their iPads, and then you've got the 2 TV screens. They're playing the songs. They changed the songs on the screens, and then during the Watchtower, they're showing images from the Watchtower up on the screens. So that was it's trying to become a little bit more exciting, but it wasn't as charismatic as I thought. I was hoping that they were a little bit more like the evangelical churches, because I've seen a few videos where they get up and dance, but these were really old people, so it was still just morbid singing, to songs on the video instead of in the book. Although I did speak to one of the people afterwards, and I said, this is, it sort of changed a bit. And he goes, oh, wow, you would not believe how much things have changed in the last year. He goes, we've got this great website. We now have this like JWTV, and some of the old people come and sit there at the Kingdom Hall and watch it because they don't have the internet at home. And I was like, oh, how does it make you feel like seeing the governing body, talking? And he goes, oh, it's fantastic that we can now interact directly with God's chosen channel. So I thought it was like every time I watch Tight Pants Tony or anyone, I'm like completely embarrassed. I think I actually believed or was associated with that type of person. But for some reason, the true believers still seem to think that they are God's people, and I'm like, they're just an embarrassment. You wouldn't have them running a corporation, let alone a 8 billion strong religion. If you would think.
I think that's probably because I think it has changed in a number of ways. There's the website, there's the videos, there's, like you say, the technology, the tablets, there's the cart witnessing. I think the most significant change has been how the amount of visibility that the governing body get, like you've just said. Because when I was a JW, right up to when I was kind of waking up around 2010, 2011, it didn't feel like you really knew who the governing body were, unless you were like an insider or maybe you lived in New York and you saw them regularly. I didn't really know the names of the governing body until I started waking up. And my very first few videos that I did for my channel, I did a series called Getting to Know You, because I was literally hunting down audio clips of talks and putting them with captions so that people could see what the governing body was saying. But then, of course, in 2014, JW Broadcasting gets launched, and suddenly in full HD, on an almost monthly basis, or at least 2 monthly basis, we're now getting the governing body being beamed into people's living rooms. And I think that's fantastic, because people get to see for themselves that these are just eccentric, bumbling, small-minded men.
Yeah, I mean, my first time interacting was at Bethel with a governing body member, and it was Fred Franz. He was in his late 90s at the time, and they got me as the head waiter to seat him, and they said to get a nice blonde, young blonde sister to sit next to him, because he's got this real thing for blondes. And so there was a girl, I think her name was Cheryl, she was one of the nurses, and I sat her with her, and I was like shocked. Like, here I'd always had this perception.
Are you making that
Bethel
up? That just sounds outrageous. I want to sit next to a blonde sister.
Yeah, it's true. I sort of suddenly realised that all these people, these different governing body members and the Bethel, the branch committee members, etc., they all had their ways, their personalities. Some of them are really grumpy, some were mean, some were nice, but they all were just like anyone else. And so
you'd
that's
be embarrassed, wouldn't you? You'd be embarrassed even making that public knowledge that you like sitting next to blonde women, let alone, when you go on overseas visits, making sure that that's one of the criteria that gets reached. That's just astonishing.
Yeah. And it sort of takes away that that whole I can't think of the word, but it just makes it like just a religion. It's just human beings, and I guess in reality, every religion is going to be run by human beings, and Moses was a human. But when you're not in part of Bethel, you sort of build up this special feeling about them. I'm watching the Young Pope. It's a TV show at the moment. And it's absolutely incredible. And it's the same sort of thing. Here you have this Pope that is infallible, has ultimate say, no one can question him, but he's just a human with his own thoughts. And yet there's a billion people mindlessly following this person. And some of the popes have been horrific in the past. Some of them, like the latest one's a little bit better. And the governing body is the same. And once you get into Bethel, once you start seeing them on JWTV, you start realising that these are people that are just normal people with their personality flaws, but they also are making mistakes. They're not directed by Holy Spirit. So why is it that so many millions of people are just laying their lives down for them, and willing to like with my son, he was horrified when I said that they don't take blood transfusions, and he could not believe that a person would let their child die refusing blood simply because some religious leader has said that that's what they think the Bible says. And he's going, and with blood, my son's going, but does it say that in the Bible? I'm like, well, it doesn't say don't take blood transfusions. It says you're not allowed to eat blood. And it's not about, it's about showing respect for life. So really, it doesn't really carry over to blood transfusions at all. But yeah, that's what they interpret it as. And so people let their children die for that. And my son just could not comprehend it. And I can't comprehend it anymore either, particularly after knowing these people, meeting them, seeing them online.
Yeah, we're talking about leaders who are detached from reality and entirely unworthy of the veneration that gets lavished on them. I've got another question, a few more questions to rattle through. Do you sense that more people are leaving, or does it feel the same as when you left?
It's not a huge amount more. It's a little bit more, but not a huge amount more. I mean, it's quite shocking because I really started this, I guess, 10 years ago. And when I got this information, and I'm like, wow, this is now, really freely available on the internet. It was this feeling that the religion will just start nosediving after, I personally thought 2014, because I knew witnesses are very superstitious. And so I thought there's going to be this idea, we've got the generation teaching sort of got messed up a bit, but there's still this idea of 100 years from 1914, we'll just hang around till then. And then I just thought the religion would nosedive. And I'm shocked that it hasn't. There's this like gradual movement that's sort of maybe increasing slightly, but it's not a dam breaking or anything. And I think I've been thinking a lot about, why is this? And I also read an interesting article recently about how the internet's sort of broken and fake news on the internet, etc. And so the problem is you have, first of all, cognitive dissonance. People don't want to leave. They don't want to change their beliefs. They don't want to face the truth. They don't want to face reality. They just want what's comfortable. So the majority of people are just these true followers that will take whatever's their cultural norms that they've been given. And so you've got the apostates giving information, which we've put together as a group a lot of very, very compelling and interesting information. But then, like with fake news on Facebook, you have jw.org putting out this very compelling information, and there's so much misinformation on it. I've got an article actually on it. So many things that's like, why don't we do this, or do we do that? Do we shun? No, we don't shun, and things that are just blatantly lies. And so you have that misinformation. So you've got all these people too scared to, wake up to reality. And then the fact that then they can easily find an answer that's really simple and just like appeases them, that it's not going to be as dramatic. Although I still have a little bit of hope that there's this bigger movement that is the physically in, mentally out people, that there's more and more of them. And as they become more aware of each other and they are aware that there's this support for them, then there could be it could start to increase at a more rapid rate of people actually leaving. But they just need to know that there's other people there ready to help them in the same situation.
It feels to me, I mean, I keep expecting kind of the floodgates to open and to be kind of completely overwhelmed by the amount of people exiting, and that's not happened. But it feels to me as though there is a gradual increase, a very gradual increase, and that kind of makes sense, because all it takes usually in a family is for one person to wake up, and then the likelihood of the rest of the family starting to wake up just slightly increases. So you can expect a slight snowball effect. But I agree with you that the propaganda that's being put out by Watchtower is very clever in terms of playing on people's emotions and bypassing logic entirely and just making them feel good about being Jehovah's Witnesses. So,
and there's this thing where faith is a virtue. The unquestioning acceptance of faith is supposed to be this wonderful thing, when it's actually a really terrible thing, because it means anyone can be a victim to anything. And the fact that strong religious belief isn't to do with logic is it's a very powerful that people can just be moved by emotion, and the witnesses do that just so well with the whole the control they have over information, the control over your behaviour, and then the control if you leave with shunning. They've packaged up that emotional side so strongly that takes a lot to get that logic through.
Absolutely. Now, I've got another question for you. The ex-Jehovah's Witness community is now large, and there are many diverse voices, which can often lead to infighting and controversy. Do you ever worry about newly exiting witnesses being put off by acrimony between ex-JWs, or are you optimistic that they can deal with it?
No, I think it's terrible. I can imagine that it's exactly what a witness wants to see. They want to get on there and go, look at these people, their lives have fallen apart, they've got nothing else to think about, they've got nothing else of interest, and then they just fight amongst themselves. So I'm really disappointed about it. The whole point of leaving is realizing that there is not one specific truth that humans can understand. It's like we're going to have different opinions, and different people have different lives that are applicable to them. So whether somebody is introverted or extroverted, that will all come up with something different. So just because someone has a different point of view, shouldn't cloud that whole overall viewpoint that the Watchtower is a damaging religion. That it either needs to change, or more so, people need to leave it, and that should be the end goal. Like pointing in on each other instead of what that end goal is, I think is terribly destructive and quite depressing for me to see that happen.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I have two ways of looking at it. One is to say, well, it's almost inevitable that you're going to get more friction the larger a movement gets, because the larger it gets, the more diverse voices you have. And the more diverse voices you have, the more they're going to kind of clash with each other. So in a way, it's encouraging to see, in a strange way, it's encouraging to see infighting, because that proves that the movement's growing. But I see what you mean. On the other hand, it's extremely off-putting, and it feels as though some ex-witnesses just can't grasp the idea that other people are entitled to their opinions, and it doesn't matter whether it's some person on a forum or someone with a massive YouTube channel. We all get to have our opinion and don't deserve to be attacked for having it. So it feels as though perhaps the JW mentality is sticking a little bit, where it's like, no, this is the one true way, and if you disagree with me, you're this, you're that. Cue character assassination. So
yeah, I mean, and that's the whole ad hominem attack thing, where I get it all the time, emails to my website attacking me as a person. On my YouTube thing that I did the other day, someone said, we heard they got disfellowship for being a liar and a thief. And I'm like, well, that's a new one, because I'd heard every other thing under the sun about why I left, but not thief. I hadn't heard that one before. So there's just these attacks that people do on you. And so, yeah, maybe you're true. It's just it's a fact of life that they'll then just start being the same people, but towards each other outside the community. But yeah, I don't think it's very productive. I think it's great that there's different viewpoints, and I may not agree that some people are more aggressive in their activism. I don't particularly agree with that, but I think that might work as well. So I just try not to get involved, because I know as soon as I start voicing too many opinions, strong opinions, I'll be one bit like my manipulative mother, and the other one is I'll start getting attacked back. So I try and sit back a little bit.
But I guess your activism is ideally positioned, because I've noticed you've started putting out more YouTube content, and that's fantastic. And by the way, you guys should check out the JW Facts YouTube channel. But for the most part, your work is, well, here are the facts. And when it's just pure facts, then there isn't really much to argue with. But the minute you start voicing an opinion, the minute you make yourself susceptible to, I see things differently and what have you. So yeah, it's...
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit unsure about sort of my opinions, because I realise I missed out on 35 years of actually proper information. I had these rock solid opinions, and now I realise when I talk about some of these other things, I don't sound like an expert, and I change along the way, and I hear other people's points of view, and so I don't want to be dogmatic about all these other topics that I'm not really an expert in. So yes, I like to just stick to the facts about Jehovah's Witnesses, and then, like I said, I'm doing the YouTube because a lot of people are used to that medium now. They don't want to read. So as much as I was a bit shy about getting my face on the internet, I think I just need to do that to try and reach that new audience, the younger sort of audience.
Can I be really cheeky and ask what kind of visitor numbers you're getting at JW Facts?
Yeah, my visitors haven't gone up for quite a while now. So I get about 50,000 unique visitors a month, and have for maybe 5 years now. And that's where I realised I've got to start getting onto the YouTube, because I did like that. These YouTube clips get 10,000 in a week, or in a couple of weeks. So that's sort of where they're going to. So I realised otherwise it'll, the internet's sort of stagnating, and these multimedia forms are becoming more important.
Although that's still a lot of people, isn't it? 50,000. It's nothing to be embarrassed about. And those are 50,000 people who they're not just looking for the latest sensation. They're doing genuine research into their beliefs, like I was back in sort of 2010, 2011. It's a valuable resource.
I think it's over 4 million unique visits I've had over the last 10 years now. And that started from nothing to sort of millions. And then even the latest video clip I put on, I think it's already like several thousand hours of people viewing it. And so that reach that the internet gives, it's just incredible how much of an effect you can have if you have content there.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that the internet's been a total game changer. And I don't know how things would have worked before the internet, when your best way of reaching people was essentially just to write a book. And again, as going back to what we were saying earlier, you're always going to have limited reach in print media. It's just a fact compared to your reach on the internet. So that's kind of why I think that's a large reason why we are seeing this steady increase, is because of the availability of information. It's absolutely brilliant. What is your most popular JW Facts article?
Off the top of my head now, I think there's the one on shunning is one of the most popular ones, and a couple of the controversial ones. So shunning, the blood transfusions, the child abuse ones. So and the other one actually that's taken over is the one on beards, beards and Christmas. So the two that I did later on, because I didn't think they were like that important topics, were the ones that ended up being more interesting to people. Because I mean, to me, the deep doctrine, I was reading all the old books, when I was a kid in bed, to me, doctrine was really important, and that was the important thing to prove. But for a lot of other people, it's just this manipulation and control, and it's like, there's no reason why men can't have beards. In fact, men are supposed to have beards according to the Bible, and there's no reason not to sort of celebrate birthdays. And so those articles about birthdays and Christmas and beards, they're just the normal average person that just thinks doesn't feel right, are the ones that are getting a lot more views now.
Yeah, I can kind of understand that, because the beards article is just, like you say, it just beautifully showcases how controlling the religion is, and how the teachings are formed more through opinions, through individuals having opinions, than necessarily through scripture. So that doesn't surprise me, frankly. And I just wanted to add that while I was researching for my book, I was constantly on JW Facts. I can remember specifically when I was researching for 1925, it's just useful to have all of the quotes kind of nicely lined up for you, so that you can see what the most damning material was. So thank you so much for making that information easily available. It's brilliant.
Good.
So I'm down to my last two questions. Just before we went on air, a friend of yours was on Skype, and we were kind of she was talking about the impact that our activism has had on her. Is it surreal for you to think about the people whose lives have been impacted by your website?
Yeah, I don't feel any different than anyone else. I don't feel like special. Like, even at work, I've never been a manager or anything, because I just don't feel I have I don't want to be telling people what to do. And so that I sort of have got this this celebrity status, I guess, within that community, and so many people, like from all over the world, everywhere I go, people want to meet me, take me for a beer or whatever, come and chat. It's I'm sort of astounded. My wife, or ex-wife now, I guess, we went to California, Los Angeles, and we got meeting by some people, and then they organised a big dinner, and there's a whole lot of people there, and my wife's just like, wow, like, you're just nobody, you're just a guy, like, what is with this? And so I find it unbelievable. Like, I don't think it's deserving. I don't really think I've done any more than anyone else, and I don't actually even know as much about certain topics. Like, people want to talk to me about topics, and my site is about everything, and so there's people that really specialize in the tetragrammaton, or really specialize in different words and different doctrine and things that know way more than me. So I feel like always a little bit embarrassed when I talk to people and I realize they know more about something than I do. But I think it's just that I managed to get it all into this one cohesive package. And again, back to like when I started writing it, my mother and some different people were reading it and going, there's a lot of anger here and this isn't totally true. And I realized I just had to get rid of all that emotion, all of any errors. I copied stuff from other sources online where they hadn't quoted properly, and I realized the smallest error undermines the whole thing. And so it was really more, I guess it's just that whole background to where I got to where I was, that I just managed to get information that was like, I needed to keep it just as accurate as possible. So yeah, I don't feel deserving of any of anything, but I'm a bit overwhelmed by so many people whose lives have been changed.
Yeah, I see. I know. I can totally relate to what you're saying about celebrity. I don't feel remotely like a celebrity. When people ban that word around, it's like, well, a celebrity is someone who can't go shopping without being approached, and I can very easily go shopping without being approached. But at the same time, you have this niche movement where things need to be said, and if you are lucky enough to hit the right to get the right message across and hit the right audience, suddenly lots of people know you. So it's no surprise that people feel affection and admiration. But at the same time, I go back to your friend who was on camera just before we went live, and she was saying that she was affected by the Worst Convention Ever series that I did, and as a result of that, her child won't be raised as a Jehovah's Witness, for which she was very, very grateful. But I was saying, well, listen, I woke up because of Paul. So it's just incredible to think that there is that potential for lives to be changed for the better purely through putting information across, and that never ceases to amaze me.
Yeah, I really thought that when I was at the meeting today, where there's a bunch of families with little children. I'm like, a lot of the witnesses that I met, they all seemed really, really, lovely, and some of them seemed to be really happy there. But I just looked at those kids and shuddered to think about what I went through, what they're going to go through with this alienation at school, and this all the insecurity that brings up, and the embarrassment, and the missing out, and so it's those ones that like you say, that next generation that you save, like the ones that are leaving now, they're going to go through so much suffering leaving the religion, but they will stop that next generation. So yeah, I think that's the important thing. And I've got a graph on my website about if the witnesses continue growing at like 6.5–7%, like they were in the 90s, they'd be up at, I think it was like 14 million or something now instead of 8 million. But because in the last 20 years they went from 8% to sort of 2%, that's like 6 million less people that are witnesses. So it's not the ones that are in there, it's the ones that aren't in there that don't even know that they've been saved or protected from that damage. They're the ones that have really having the benefit from it.
Yeah, and that's kind of what gives me the biggest thrill, is the thought of helping people who will never even know that they've been helped because it's their parent or their grandparent even that decided to make the switch. So it's very, very satisfying, isn't it, to see that. Final question. I ask this to all of my guests. We've mentioned your YouTube channel, but and maybe this would be the good time to mention it again, but do you have anything to plug?
Well, this will give me some motivation, I guess, to make some more videos. But yeah, I have this the JW Facts video. So I've got a new article coming out hopefully over the next week on just the statistics, rundown of all the different statistics on growth, and then I've got a really cute one coming with my son, where he's like absolutely adorable little kid, and so he's reading all the nasty emails that people send me, and I'm reading all the nice ones, which I'm not sure that was really not kind of me to do, but he thinks it's a bit, he's pretty blown away by how the sort of information people can send me. So that will be cute, but that might be next month, I guess. I'll get that out.
Oh, brilliant. Well, again, viewers, if you haven't yet subscribed to Paul's channel, I think it's safe to say, Paul, that you did some videos a while back, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and then you went quiet on YouTube. But from what you're telling us, you're now going to make more of an effort with it. So if you haven't yet subscribed to Paul's channel, the channel is JW Facts, quite simply. Go on there, click subscribe, and be treated to the videos that Paul has just mentioned and more. But Paul, it's been an absolute honour to have you on the channel. As I was saying to you before we went on air, I hope it's not long before I get to shake your hand in person. But thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you. It's a total pleasure. And yeah, you definitely have to get down under here. There's a lot of people waiting to meet you.
I can't wait. I have relatives in Australia, so I have lots of reasons to go, but it's just the airfare at the moment. But I'll figure it out. But again, thanks so much. And viewers, I hope you have found this conversation as interesting as I have. Please don't forget to subscribe for more videos. And as always, thank you for watching.